Good evening. Hi. We are talking about dating again, so I see why you guys are trying to play it cool. It's working. I'm intimidated. American Sniper is a movie about Chris Kyle. I promise you I'm going to connect it. All right, just bear with me. All right, American Sniper is a biopic of Chris Kyle, who is the most decorated sharpshooter in American history. Over 250 confirmed kills, which I know you, Mennonite Church, we would never rejoice in that, but it's a pretty cool movie. And there's a scene in the movie where this guy's being trained. He's in sniper school, and he has a spotter who's using his binoculars and looking at a target, and then he is shooting at the target. And the spotter is like his coach, and is like, Kyle, you gotta get those groupings tighter. So groupings is when you're shooting, each time you hit the target, the closer they are together, the better you are of a shooter, because you actually hit what you're aiming at. So his instructor used this line. He said, aim small, miss small. If you aim at a shirt button and you miss, you'll miss by 2 inches. Still get the heart. If you aim at a shirt, you'll miss by 2 feet. You don't hit the target at all. That little phrase, right, aim small, miss small, right, is what shooting is all about. You are aiming at a bullseye. And I think that image is a pretty good comparison to what the dating experience is like for so many people, right? Last week we talked about marriage, and we learned about the ideal, God's design for marriage out of Malachi 2. And you might be thinking, well, I'd like to get there. I'd like to be married, but that's a tiny little bullseye, and I'm terrified of shooting my shot because what if I miss? And so a lot of people just never shoot. But as Wayne Gretzky famously said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott, Fredy Orozco. Dating it requires you to shoot your shot. So I want to take that idea, aim small, miss small, and I want to use it kind of in dating. So I'm going to connect it to a proverb. So the thing I'm going to try to argue tonight is start with good enough, but end with great. If we aim small and aim at someone who is good enough, I think we might be surprised to find that that person might actually be great. So 2 points, start small and then end big. First point, start small. Proverbs 17, verse 24. I'm using one verse, but I'll talk a long time out of one verse. Proverbs 17, 24. The discerning sets his face towards wisdom, but the eyes of a fool are on the ends of the earth. Proverbs is a book in the Old Testament where Solomon and other writers of the scriptures gathered wisdom. And the way Proverbs works is you look at the world around you, or these prophets looked at the world around them and said, this is how I see the world working. And God's Spirit said, that is an accurate assessment of the world. Write that down. So when we read Proverbs, we're not just reading about their life, we're reading about things that help us in our life. So if we take this proverb, in each proverb, you can find a principle that applies to a variety of things in life. So the principle of the discerning looking towards wisdom, but foolish people looking at the ends of the earth, I think reminds us that before we look at others, we should look at ourselves. In regards to dating, before you look at the many options, before you look at the ends of the earth, you should look in the mirror. So I want to talk about singleness. That's our first point, the starting small, and then we're going to talk about dating in the second point. So here in this first point, I'm making a few assumptions about singleness. So I just want to be honest so that you guys know that I'm on your team. I'm not just here as a dude who's been married a long time and thinks he knows everything. So my first assumption is a lot of you are single. I assume that because most of you are cool and you were kind of like being kind of cold with me, but not like uncool, you know, that kind of unapproachable, like talk to me but don't, right? You guys have that. It's working, right? I'm assuming that many of you are single, and in addition to being single, I'm assuming many of you don't want to be single. See, I haven't dated in a long time, but I remember the angst of shooting your shot and it not working out, and then having to see that person. And if you saw that person in the same class or in the same church, that sucked, and you were like, maybe I should move countries, right? Maybe you guys are more cool than me, but that's how I felt. So I'm making some assumptions that you can relate to that kind of experience. As a single, if you're single, you don't want to be. I'm assuming that if you're single, you probably have tried at some point to shoot your shot and it didn't work out. Or maybe it did work out, but then it didn't work out because you were dated and then broke up. Or dated, but it was terrible. So I think most people, or everyone starts single, but I think most people don't want to be single. And as you live in that season, I think we experience tremendous frustration. The realities of single life is that everyone starts that way. I mentioned already, I've been married a long time. My wife and I celebrated 10 years last summer. So I know, it's crazy. We made it, praise God. Thank you, Nate, he's on my team. It is crazy to think I have a decade living with the same girl and she still hasn't killed me. Wow. But as long as I have been married, I'm 33, so I've been married for 10 years. That means 23 of the years of my life, I was single. I actually didn't have someone. So 2/3 of my life, I lived single. Everyone starts that way. Every single person is born into a family of origin, and you should wait a while. You should be mature enough to date. So most people wait decades before they start dating, much less get married. The reality of life in a fallen world is not just people starting single, but then a lot of people end up single again, right? Through death, through divorce, through addictions, through infidelity. There are a lot of reasons that people end up back in that place, but many people who are single were not previously single, may even have been married. That might not be your story, but you certainly know people who have gone through the pain of divorce. So singleness is not just something that is for your younger years. It might be something you come back to. That's the reality of singleness. But more than that, as everyone is in their kind of single era, all of us are growing up. So that young adult window, so 18 to 30, or if you read sociology now, they talk about emerging adulthood, and it's 16 to 35. The window's getting bigger because our world is more complex and people have more pressure and people have more options, and what we have realized is that more options is not more better. So we live in a world where people feel more and more overwhelmed, but we live through the same things people have always lived through. Disappointment, singleness, finding someone, ending up single again. What this does is it creates a lot of pressure for people. And in this season of singleness, which everyone starts in, and many people go back to, people are prone towards several mistakes. So I want to outline 3 things, 3 ways that people struggle in their season of singleness before they even get to dating. The first one is people go through what I'll call an identity crisis. Because that desire for a relationship, which I consider a good and godly thing, it is a righteous thing to long for a spouse. It is a righteous thing to want to have a family. And as people want that, they start to lose track of the other things that they want. God's design for us is that we would be people that have purpose and have passions that push us towards those purposes. So all of us have vocations, hobbies, friends, faith expression. We want to live a certain kind of Christian life. But what happens to a lot of people is in the singleness, they have all these things they want to pursue, but those pursuits either shrink in importance or they get fully pushed aside as they pursue finding someone. People are discontent in their singleness. I remember back in the day when I was just out of high school, I said I wanted a girlfriend, but then the way I lived my life clearly communicated that I did not. I lived to play basketball, so I had a job because I had to buy gas, pay insurance, pay for my cell phone, and then I was going to school, so I needed a little bit of money for tuition. But the thing that I most longed to do was play basketball. So if I had free time, I would text the guys and I would say, hey, I'm free tonight. Who's hooping? We'd show up around 6. We'd leave at 10. Right? That's what I wanted to do. And in that season, I met a girl that I liked, started dating, but nothing else in my life changed. She was a girlfriend, I guess, but I lacked the maturity to prioritize that relationship. I had these passions that I was chasing, so the relationship was unimportant. People do that. People struggle in that way. The passions are so important, they neglect the relationship, or in the pursuit of a relationship, they fully neglect their passions. What it shows is people don't know who they are. My problem at that point in my life was I did not know who I was. I did not know what I wanted in life. I just wanted to have fun and not be alone. And what it did is it created a lot of conflict, a lot of struggles in our relationship, and ultimately we ended up breaking up. For so many people, the identity crisis distracts them from a tremendous opportunity in that singleness, which is the development of character. Character is who you are when no one's looking, and when you have no one that you are required to impress, who you actually are is what shows up. So when you're dating, as an example, when you're dating, the first thought in your head is, what can I do to make that person think that I'm fun, that I'm cool? How can I present myself so that they want to be around me? And if that person isn't in your life, then the focus becomes, if I'm not impressing them, then who am I impressing? For too many people, it becomes, I want to impress every available option. Your identity becomes, how can I be loved by a bunch of fickle people? Or, if you're focused on character development, it becomes, how can I become the person that God made me to be? For so many people, singleness is an era of identity crisis. Not just identity crisis, it becomes a time of impatience. And I recognize I'm painting a darker picture, but that's not true for every person. I think many people struggle in singleness, but some don't. I think some people are in fact content in their singleness. I think singleness has a lot of benefits. You have more time to pursue career. You have more time for hobbies. You have more money for the things that you want to buy. You have a lot more flexibility in that you can change things without consulting anyone because there is no one to consult. So there's a whole lot of good that comes in that season. You have an opportunity for character development. But often, people can't focus on the good. They look at the bad, and they look at, why am I still here? Like, is something wrong with me? Because I don't want to be single, and I'm trying to do the right things, and I'm working on myself, and I'm like trying to be a good Christian, and like I've talked to a few people, but nothing's worked out, so maybe the problem is me. People get very, very impatient. And they look at this season as waiting. That's the word I hear a lot. I'm waiting. I'm just waiting for another opportunity. I'm waiting for the next person. I'm waiting for a second chance with the person that got away. Waiting is the key word. But what if singleness wasn't waiting? What if singleness, more accurately, was growing? So if character is who you are when no one's looking, then singleness gives you the greatest opportunity in your life to form character when no one is looking. So you're not waiting. Waiting is passive. Waiting is wasteful. You're growing. It's time. It's an opportunity to develop into the kind of person that you want to be. Which character trait is most important to you? Singleness gives you an opportunity to look after it. It's an opportunity to grow up. I've been married 10 years. We have a few kids. And my oldest son is almost 4 years old. And my greatest passion in working with my wife is parenting these kids, and the thing I most want to see in them is character formation. And character formation comes through the tiniest, insignificant things repeated many, many, many times. So one of the ways that we seek to form character in our kid is that when he gets a treat, so whatever, he's done a good thing. He helped his brother clean up their toys. He helped mom take out the trash. He helped me hold open the recycle bin so that we could take out cardboard. Whenever he's done a good thing, we tell him, yay, you get a treat, and he gets a Starburst, or he gets something that's individually wrapped. And when he's done with that thing, he gets a direct command, son, go put that in the trash. And the expectation is that he would put it in the trash. And if he misses, he actually gets in trouble, which may sound harsh, but my goal in that moment is if you can take one tiny piece of paper and you can walk it and put it in a trash can, you are the kind of person who is learning to follow through on your responsibilities. You have a delicious candy that, in the mind of a 4-year-old, is all-consuming. But what he needs to learn is, even when I'm having a great time, even when I am overwhelmed with joy, I have a job to do. I need to finish my work. I need to handle my business. I'm teaching a 4-year-old to do that. Or my wife and I together are teaching a 4-year-old to do that. What singleness does is it gives you that opportunity to learn on your own. Your parents might not be as involved anymore because you're young adults, right? Emphasis on the adult part. But singleness gives you the opportunity to do a bunch of little things that end up making you into the right kind of person. This is Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. This is what the whole book was about. It's if you make your bed every day, it actually does something to you, right? If you take out the trash or if you pet a cat, all these goofy things that he talked about, what they do is they shape character. They shape you into the kind of person you're gonna be. So singleness is a time when people struggle with identity crisis, they struggle with impatience, and they start to miss the fact that in this season, your character is being formed, and it's not just being formed by you. If you're a Christian, what is true about you is that God has said, if you are a Christian, if his spirit is inside of you, God is working in your life to transform you from one degree of glory to another. So 2 Corinthians 3:18, I didn't even put it on the screen because I didn't think I'd have enough time. But this verse tells us God is changing us. We are being transformed from one degree of glory to another. It's a passive verb. It means God is the actor and he is changing us apart from your own effort. So if in this season of singleness, you put in the effort to do the little things like take out the trash and respond to text messages in a timely manner, as small examples, God is working in your life to shape you into the kind of person you want to be. People struggle in identity crisis, and impatience, and lastly, an information overload. Our proverb warns us that the foolish looks to the ends of the earth. And one of the struggles that people have in today's world is that there has never been more options, and more options is not always better. So what happens is people look at everyone and then reject everyone because it's overwhelming. And you start to nitpick wildly insignificant things. So I didn't like that they wore that outfit, or they spent time with that person who I find kind of annoying, so they obviously lack discernment, or I've actually never seen them at my service, even though our church has 10 services to go to. So you're they obviously don't go to church, and you start to make assumptions, and you're zero interest. I don't even like the way they breathe, right? We, maybe none of you have thought that, right? But we can be remarkably petty, and we reject people, or we look at all the options, we think, how can I pick just one? And you chase a bunch of different options, right? People do that. This combination of identity crisis, impatience, and information overload, what it does is it creates tremendous discontentment in us. These things, for so many people, what singleness is that it's a season of discontentment rather than an opportunity for transformation. And what I want you to think of when you think of what it is like being single is that it is an opportunity for growth. It is an opportunity to learn to be content regardless of your situation. Because the reality of life is that people who are content tend to be content regardless of the circumstances. And people who are discontent continue to be discontent even when their circumstances improve. I was at an event a few weeks ago, a youngish adult event where we were talking about vocation. We were talking about career. And I was speaking to a young woman who is a school teacher, and she was talking about working at a public school and then working at a Christian school and just sharing the highs and lows of each experience. And as we were talking, I asked her, do you like teaching more or do you like kids more? And she's like, honestly, that's a good question. I like them both, but I guess I really love kids. I just love being around kids and seeing them learn and seeing the joy that I feel when I see them understand something and me knowing that I help them, that's such a rewarding thing. And I was like, so you loved working at your previous school? She's like, no, honestly, it was really hard, but I loved the kids, so I just did it. I'm like, do you love your school now? She's like, yeah, I like it. There's still some challenges, but I love the kids, so I keep doing it. She was content regardless of her circumstances because she just cared about kids. I think there's a parallel between this young woman's experience and the way that we approach singleness. If you are content to be single, if you can be okay in developing character and being in a season not of waiting, but of growing, you will be content when your circumstances change. If you are discontent as you are single, I think you will continue to be discontent as you date. The other person will not impress you enough. The other person will not be fun enough. The other person will not pay enough attention, and you will be disappointed yet again. When I say start small, what I'm trying to get you to understand is singleness is an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to look at ourselves before we look at the many options. The wise The discerning look at wisdom or pursue wisdom, right? And the fools look towards the ends of the earth. What singleness does, it gives you an opportunity to discern who you actually are and then who you want to be. So I want to give you a verse. I'll just give you the reference, and then you can look it up on your own time. When we talk about maturity, the word that most comes to mind is character, who you are when no one's looking. And if we're going to use the language of the Bible, character means there are some things you leave behind, and there are some things that you become. So the things that we leave behind are what Scripture will call the works of the flesh. So if you read Galatians 5, verses 19 to 23, Galatians 5, 19 to 23, you will see two phrases. You'll see works of the flesh and fruit of the Spirit. If you are to grow in character, if you are growing as a Christian, you're being transformed by God working in your life, there should be less works of the flesh and more fruits of the Spirit. So the works of the flesh are things like impurity, jealousy, anger, divisions, drunkenness. These are things that show that we're part of the world, show that we live exactly like the world. And as God changes us, as our character is transformed and formed through our effort as well, we leave some of these things behind. And as God works in our life and fills us with His Spirit and empowers us to live the Christian life, we see more love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. There are things we leave behind, and there are things that we become. Growing up, we start small so that we can grow up, and as we grow up, we are trying to become the right kind of person, a Christian with maturity. Character formation and service, I think, are the two biggest markers of maturity. The kind of person you are, leaving behind the flesh, pursuing the Spirit, and then the places where you help other people, particularly if those other people cannot pay you back. Those are the things that show that you are in fact growing up. Because as someone who's a few years ahead of you in adulthood, my life is constant service for other people. I have a wife who needs my help. I have kids who need my help. I have people in my life who need my help and are owed my love. What you are learning in your singleness is how to serve other people, and what it does is it prepares you to be in the life of another person. Singleness is not waiting, it's growing. So we start small, but then we want to end big. So I'm going to circle back to the proverb, and then I want to talk about the way that we should pursue dating. So if you are single and you discern that you are mature enough to pursue a dating relationship, what comes next? So Proverbs 17, verse 24, the discerning sets his face towards wisdom, but the eyes of the fool are on the ends of the earth. So we already said that this proverb teaches us to look inward before we look outward, but we also learn from this proverb that wise people learn from the past. If the discerning person sets their eyes on wisdom, what happens is that they end up learning from past experiences, their own and other people's. So yes, we have to look inward, but more than that, I think we need to free ourselves from the traps you may have fallen into, either through your own experience or through what your closest friends have gone through. So I want to list you a bunch of disappointment traps that people fall into. These are gathered through like 30, 40, 50 conversations with young adults, sharing their hurt, sharing their pains, sharing their frustrations about dating and where it goes wrong. We are disappointed. We fall into disappointment traps, either in ourselves, we're disappointed with ourselves, or we're disappointed with others. Those are the directions of the disappointment, but what they are is they're traps that get us stuck and prevent us from moving forward in a healthy way. So first, people fall into the trap of disappointment with self. It is possible that through past failures, whether your own or people close to you, the thing you're most afraid of, the thing that prevents you from moving forward, is the reality of lack of effort, where you look at your life and you think, either I haven't tried hard enough and I don't know if I could, or I tried really hard, but I have too many things in my life. I'm too distracted by various other commitments. I have school, I have work, I have family, I have friends, and the idea that I would then also have to make time for this person who might not even appreciate the effort I'm making for them, it's overwhelming. So it's too much. I'm just not gonna try. Or you're disappointed in yourself in lack of focus, in that there have been opportunities that maybe we fumbled away because there were too many opportunities where this person was cool and this person was cool, this person was cool, and I didn't want to pursue this one because I was terrified of ruining the friend group, but then I pursued this one, and then this person actually knows this person, so it ruined the friend group anyways, and it's too many options. If I'm gonna find someone, it's not gonna be from here. It's gonna be someone from another church, probably another country, so that there's no danger to me, right? We're disappointed in ourselves and we think, I can't be trusted to pursue a relationship in a healthy way. Or you might be disappointed with yourself in lack of success, where all you can think of is past failed relationships, and as you remember those relationships, all you remember are your own errors. So the things that you didn't do. So you're like, I didn't communicate well enough, or I held grudges, or I did these other things. I lacked effort, I lacked focus, and I'm like, I'm the problem. So I can't move on. These traps, disappointment with self, prevents you from moving forward. But our proverb teaches us that the discerning sets his face toward wisdom. Wisdom, as I defined at the beginning, is observing the world around you and learning from the way the world works. Wise people learn from experience. So regardless of your dating history, regardless of your dating disappointments, if in your season of singleness, in your season of growing, you set your mind on building character, on serving other people, no amount of disappointment with self prevents you from trying again. The other trap that people get stuck in is disappointment with others. And I think people struggle with disappointment with self, but it is far easier to be disappointed in other people. And people give you plenty of opportunities to be disappointed in them. I think people struggle because we're disappointed with others because other people often fail to show interest. They lack interest in ourselves. Everyone has been in a relationship or knows someone who's been in a relationship where you tried harder than the other person. And inevitably it fizzles out because relationships require reciprocity. Both people need to give 100%, and that's what makes a relationship work. And you go into a relationship and you're thinking, well, I drive to them every time. I text them first every time. And you know what? People like that suck. And actually, I know so many people like that. And my friend knows people like that. And their friend knows people like that. So I think everyone is like that. I'm just not gonna date. I'd rather be lonely, because that sucks. But that sucks less than dating someone like that. You actually don't know what the other person's like, but we assume, because of past disappointment, that everyone else is gonna be exactly the same. People lack maturity, right? People say and do dumb things and then don't really ask forgiveness, or ask forgiveness in a way that makes it seem like they don't really understand what they did. We are often disappointed with others because of lack of options. So there's one or two people that you're really interested in, but they're off the market instantly. And then you're terrified of pursuing anyone in this friend group because the friend group is a sacred cow. And if I shoot my shot and it gets weird, then everyone else in the friend group is gonna hate me for making it weird. And I don't wanna make it weird because that one person in that one friend group made it weird. And I don't wanna be them. We get stuck in the disappointment trap, both in the way we view ourselves, in the way we view other people. But wise people, the discerning, learn from the past and learn to move forward. So I'm gonna give you a way of thinking about pursuing dating as a single person that I'm building out of this proverb, that the discerning seek wisdom. So this is how I've observed the world to work, and I'm giving you this advice. It's yours to take or to reject, but this is how I encourage young adults to pursue dating relationships. Your very first move is to discern who is good enough. And I recognize that that phrase, good enough, does not elicit like the most confidence, right? When you think good enough, you think like a McDouble. Like, yeah, it's good enough, but if I had to choose between a McDouble and Cactus Club or the Keg or what, most of you are choosing the other thing, yeah? Help me out. Some of you are maybe McDouble people. Maybe that was a bad example. If I'm saying 7-Eleven hot dog or the Keg, come on. Okay, that connects with you, right? There's an obvious hierarchy to the options, right? And I think we approach dating in that way. We think, until I see a steak, I'm not shooting my shot. Aim small, miss small, right? But I think the way we misunderstand that idea is that you actually still have to shoot. And I think so often people don't shoot. So my advice is, when you are thinking, is this a person that I could potentially date? The question you should ask is, are they good enough? Like, are they a good enough fit? And here's what I mean. I want to define good enough because I recognize that sounds like you're making people like jump through hoops for you. So good enough, by good enough, I mean, are they the kind of person that is going in the right direction? That means they're not actually there, but they're going in that direction. So I'm gonna give you two words that I think are wildly important in defining good enough. Possible and probable. Those are not the same thing, but we often confuse them. So when I say possible, I'm talking about things that could possibly happen, things that are potential, but will require tremendous details working out to actually be achieved. So for example, it is possible that Fredy benches 405. I have two arms, which you need two arms to bench. My back works, so you need a back, right? And I haven't torn a tricep or a pec, so it is possible that I could bench 405. I see you laughing, dog, that hurts. It is possible. A lot of things would have to work out first, but it is possible. If you took me to a gym, though, you would find out pretty quick, you're like, that boy can barely get up a plate. What's wrong with him? I can get up a plate, though. Josh, help me out. So, if, however, you ran into Wes Huff, right, the dude who debated Billy Carson, got on Joe Rogan, right, genius, Christian apologetics guy, if you ran into him and he told you, I bench 405, his is actually probable. Because all you would have to do is get him into a gym and you would find actually he benches 405. Like, that guy built different. He's like super smart and super built. He's crazy. He's the total package. But Wes Huff can actually bench 405. If Fredy tried to bench 405, you would find out that my possible is actually never gonna get there at all. I think dating is a little bit like that because as we look at people, when we look at someone, you can figure out relatively quickly if they can actually do the thing they claim to do. Fredy can tell you I bench 4 or 5 all day. But all you gotta do is, hey, can you do 30 push-ups? I'm like, I can do like 15. Like, then no way you benching 405, man. Fredy, do you go to the gym? I'm like, once every 6 months. They're like, then no way you bench 405, right? You can learn pretty quick, is this person possibly good or are they probably good? And by probably good, that's what I mean when I say good enough. The markers of people going in the right direction are simple things like church involvement, like job security or a plan for education. Like, have they been at the same job for more than like 2 weeks, right? Do they go to church every Sunday? Do they go if they don't sit with their friends or their family? Do they bounce around between services or do they go to the same place? Do they serve if they go to church? What are their friendships with family or friendships like and family relationships like? Are they stable? Are they long-term? If you meet someone and they seem to have good character, they go to church every single Sunday, and then they have lots of friends, but the longest friend in their life has been there for 2 years, I think that's a little bit of a moment to pause. You're like, you look awesome. Why does no one in your life know you for more than 2 years? What happened 2 years ago? Nothing. I don't want to talk about it. Like, okay, interesting, right? When we talk to people who are good enough, we can find out if they're probably good enough, as in they're getting there, or if they're possibly good enough. Possible doesn't usually work out. Probable often works out. So I'm gonna give you 3 steps. Once you find someone who is good enough, here's the 3 steps. Pick a single target. I know that it seems crazy to say, but I'm just gonna say it because I think this is remarkably hard to do. Like, even in a room this big, right? You have more than one target you could potentially pick. And I think what derails people so often is they're like, well, I got lots of options. Why would I settle for one? Or they're not really options, like they're just friends. We're just friends. I'm not really shooting my shot. But you actually kind of need to, right? We aim small, miss small, but you actually have to shoot, if not just aim small. So pick one target. I'm gonna give you 2 things that help when you're picking the one target. So we wanna find someone who's good enough, but more than that, if you already have natural proximity with that person, that's a big deal. So if you see them in the same community group, if you go to the same service as them, if you stand in the same area at Amen Worship, that's proximity. That's a good thing. That means you have a natural opportunity to connect, and it will be far less intimidating when you walk through 100 people to go say hi, right? Not that you can't do that, but historically speaking, very few people do. So pick one target, natural proximity helps, and if you've ever actually talked to them before, that helps too. If you have no past negative experiences, that's super helpful. If you do have past negative experiences, then you can always try again. And you just try to say something with English words that they might understand. So pick one target. Then you actually have to shoot your shot. We aim small, miss small, right? But you only can miss small if you actually shot. So shoot your shot. So here's what I tell every single young adult I have ever spoken to about dating in the last 3 years. I'm sure I gave terrible advice longer ago, but in the last 3 years, this is the advice I've given every single person. Start with a coffee. But as you start with a coffee, here's the instructions. If you are a dude, you need a one-on-one conversation with a girl, and in this one-on-one conversation, you have to explicitly say, can I take you for a coffee? That doesn't mean you have to drive her. Girls are probably gonna say no if you offer to drive them because that's terrifying. Why would I get in a car with someone I've never met, right? But if you explicitly say, can I take you for a coffee? That removes a lot of lack of clarity. When they're like, this feels like a date. You're like, you don't have to say the date word because people freak out. But if you tell them, can I take you for a coffee? That is direct enough that it's clear, but not so direct that it's overbearing. So if you're a dude, that is what you have to do. As you are going for this date, or if you ask and that you agree next week is good, in that week, you cannot talk to another girl while you're waiting for that one coffee date. So the boys gotta hear that, right? So you pick the one target and you lock in the one date and then you throw away your phone, right? Don't talk to anyone else for that 1 week. You cannot close if you have too many options. So the boys, that's how you shoot your shot. If you are a girl and you want to be asked in a one-on-one conversation, you need to be in a one-on-one situation. So the thing that girls most struggle with, in my opinion, I'll just pause a little bit so they all stare me down. Women are pack animals. They never do anything alone. So if you are a single girl and you are hoping that a fellow would shoot a shot, and there's a young man who has been coached by Fredy, and he will look you in the face and respectfully say, can I take you for a coffee? That young man is probably not gonna talk to you if you are with 6 girls every single time he sees you. Yeah, see? But most girls are with 6 girls every time you see them. So if you are a single woman who has spent her season of singleness, not waiting, but growing, and who's saying, you know what, I feel ready. I've matured enough. I understand what it means to be a Christian. I'm not desperate for a relationship, but I would like to be in a relationship. There has to be at least some moments in your life, particularly in group settings, where you're sitting or standing by yourself so that you could even be approached. So if you're a guy, you have to talk to the girl and you have to ask for the date. If you're a girl, you have to be by yourself so that the guy could talk to you. This is just the way the world works. This is how God has made people. Men should pursue, women should be pursued. So to get to that first date, this is how it works. So pick a target, shoot your shot. Lastly, make your intentions clear. So once you get to this coffee date, the goal of the coffee date is that you're sitting face to face and can actually talk. And then you get to talk about all the things that you've gone through. So if singleness is not waiting, but growing, you should have a lot to say. You should have a lot to say about the places that you've served, the places that you've grown, the kind of person that you want to be, the passions you have in your life, what you think faith actually is. You should not run out of conversation. And as you have conversation, at some point towards the end of that conversation, you need to ask, and it doesn't matter if it's the guy or the girl this time, could we do this again? And if you are trying to progress a relationship, my advice that I tell every single person is ask for the second date while you're still at the first one, right? It gets way more awkward once you walk to the cars and then you're like, it would be, you know what, see ya. And then you know, we've all done it. We've all done it. So when you're sitting together, as terrifying as that is the least pressure you're gonna have in the entire conversation. So towards the end of the conversation, say, I had a really good time. I'd appreciate doing this again. Try to lock in a date. If the person dodges you, they're not interested, you shake their hand and you never talk to them again. No, I'm kidding. You can still talk to them again. No, but the whole point here is you want to have clarity. If you are interested in a second date, try to lock in the second date. The other person has a way of reaching you, right? We have social media. They can slide into the DM, so they can cancel at any point. What you're trying to do is if you're interested in a second date, lock in the second date in that conversation. We want to be clear with our intentions. I want a second date. I wasn't just here to like get to know you. I'm like trying to figure out like, I think you're great. I think you probably great. Could we go out again? Could we go for another coffee? Could I take you for dinner? The goal is to secure another date before the end of that date. And what I tell every person is build. You want to build from coffee to dinner. And then in general, this is not a universal truth, in general, if you're going on official dates, not like hangouts, not like group things, if you are going on official dates, we'll say like 1 week apart, you go out 3 times, you have a conversation for 90 minutes to 2 hours, somewhere in there. By the third date, you have a pretty good picture of who this person is. At that point, if the other person has no clarity that you want to pursue a dating relationship, that's the easiest off-ramp in the world. We've gone on 3 dates, and I'm not feeling it. Hey, you were great. Have a good life. And if they're feeling it too, then you can keep going. And the goal would be that relatively soon, after that point, you would be able to lock in to an official relationship. I know people don't do that anymore. We get stuck in these situationships, whatever you kids call them nowadays. But when I was a kid, that's not what we did. You try to close. So try to close. So pick a target, shoot your shot, make your intentions clear. Lastly, and most importantly, be content with the outcome. The whole point of dating is that you want to date so you can find a spouse. If it doesn't work out, that doesn't mean you're broken. That doesn't mean you stink. It doesn't mean you're trash. It doesn't mean you're ugly. It doesn't mean you're lame. It means it didn't work out. And it is better to know that it didn't work out after 2 dates, after a year of dating, than after you've been married for 2 years or 10 years. We are often so disappointed that it didn't work out. And we look inward, the disappointment trap, we fall right back into it, and we think maybe something's wrong with me. Maybe something's wrong with everyone else. Maybe I'll always be single. I'm giving you advice for life because I think marriage is good. I think dating is good, but I think singleness is an opportunity to grow. And if you try for dating and if you're pursuing marriage and it does not work out, you're right back to singleness, which is not waiting, it's growing. So as you grow, your pursuit then is sanctification, and it's not wasted. No time is wasted. The only time that's wasted is when you're waiting for something that didn't work out, and you have no purpose, you have no movement, you're just waiting. But growing is never wasted. We start small, but we end big. I know it was weird to use a sniper movie as an opening illustration, but that line I find so helpful for talking about dating relationships. Aim small, miss small. Even if you miss, it might still work out. Start with good enough, and you might be surprised to find that that person is great. Start with good enough, but end with great. So let me pray for us. Father God, thank you for this day and for this proverb. Lord, I recognize that dating is a super complex thing, and in 40 minutes or so, it's gonna be hard to cover everything. So God, I pray for a good conversation after this, that as people work through discussion questions, as people talk to their friends, as I talk to people after the service, that people would grow in wisdom, that they would learn from the experience of others around them, and that they would feel more equipped to go through singleness, to pursue growth in this season. And if they're in a relationship, God, I pray for wisdom on moving forward in the relationship, that people would know who they are and who they want to be. God, give us all wisdom. We all lack it. And in James 1:5, you remind us, if we lack wisdom, ask, and you will give generously. So give us eyes to see and help us continue to grow and be transformed from one degree of glory to another. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.